Greetings everyone, and today I'm going to be talking about countering Lee. I'm mainly going to be focusing on punishing him and option selects as armor king, but most of the stuff I'm going to discuss is going to apply to any character. Whatever character you play, this video will definitely be beneficial to you. I'm also deviating from my usual formula. I'm not going to include gameplay, analysis and commentary, then go into character tutorial, then go back to commentary. I'm just going to focus on the practice mode and just examining the character in depth. In preparation for this video, I rewatched a couple of my matches that I had against online Lees. I watched that Blasted Salamis video on the Lee overview. In addition to the Season 2 changes, Season 3 changes as for the time of making of this video have not been put into a Blasted Salami video form. And I examined, of course, the character myself in practice mode with the addition of the newly found in-game frame data that was available with this DLC. So, I'm likely going to split this into two parts. The first part is going to be just general pointers against the character without going much into specifics. And the second part is going to be examining the move list in depth, strings, punishment, whatnot, the usual stuff. And actually there's going to be a third part of me analyzing and commentating on a couple of matches I had against Lees online. So with that, let's begin. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the generic tools that Lee has. First of all, he has a standard jab, +8 on hit and +1 on block. 2 jab is just as good, +7 on hit and +1 on block also. He has an 11 frame Magic 4, which does launch. He has extensions off of his Magic 4, which we're going to talk about. He doesn't have a 12 frame move from neutral, so he doesn't have a 12 frame punish or anything 12 frames. His down forward one is the good kind. It's 13 frames till impact. It is +5 on hit and -1 on block, so the real good kind. And also slips under highs occasionally, so it does have a little bit of a high crush. He has a down forward 2, the kind that I really hate. It does launch standards. It is safe on block at -7, and that should automatically tell you that it does not launch crouchers. So it's one of those safe down forward 2s. I really hate those, but whatever. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a hop kick, because he has this. It's actually a hop knee, I believe. And it is 15 frames. So why does he need both? I don't know. Anyway, he has only one command grab in the form of this quote-unquote launching throw. It is a 1+2 break. When it comes to, he has a dig jab, a 1 dig jab, but his down 2 is actually a mid command, so he doesn't have the 11 frame dig jab, which is done with a 2. He doesn't have generic lows. His down 4 is very quick, 12 frames of startup, but it is extremely negative on hit because it's the beginning of a string, which we're going to talk about, and his down 3 is one of his most notorious tools. We're going to be talking about that as well. From while standing, he has before that, when he's standing, he has very good 10 frame punishment, but it's very execution demanding in the form of this 1-3-3-3. I could show you the because I can't do it myself, I'm not a Lee player. This is nerfed in Season 3, sadly for Lee players. It used to be easy to get a blazing kick follow-up, but now, or to get any follow-up, it's now kind of stricter. Nobody understands why this was made, but regardless. And from while standing, he actually has a 10 frames. So not only does he have a dick jab at 10, but his while standing 3 is 10 frames. So while standing 3-3 is a 10 frame punish from while standing. From here, he even though on block it is -15, but it is the beginning of his infinite kicks, so it's rarely going to get punished. They did give him a hitman transition from this, but it's not very useful. We're going to talk about why. The other thing is that he has a 14 frame while standing punish, because while standing 2 is 14 frames. He doesn't get the most damaging combos off of it. 54, I believe this is the most he can get. I don't think he can get a tailspin, but still it is 14 frames. And at 15 frames he of course can manually hop kick. among other stuff. So, unless I forgot something, this concludes the generic tools that he has, and I'm going to transition over into another section. His rage options. For the rage art, it is pretty generic. It's a mid-hitting armored move, 20 frames of startup. And on block, it is of course immensely punishable. If we could check that. It is -22, so his rage art is pretty generic. His rage drive, on the other hand, is this 16 frame mid that gives a tailspin. But on block, it is quite unique because it leaves him at a disadvantage. He can misstep afterwards, but it generally just pushes the opponent away, doesn't give him huge plus frames up close. One additional move archetype that he happens to have is this blazing kick. I don't really care about its launching properties or its use as a mid launcher. I care about its use as a, if I could get it here, as a steel pedal. So generally it is not a very good idea, or, well, depending on how you look at it, he can punish moves that leave the opponent grounded with this blazing kick. So it's kind of like a steel pedal for him. So, general overview of like what to do and what not to do against Lee. Lee is, of course, as the Blasted Salami said in their video, a very poke and chip oriented kind of a character. He uses his pokes, he uses his evasiveness and ability to kind of like annoy you in order to get you to use more dangerous moves. That is when he starts counter hitting you. With both 11 frames and 10 frames even moves of startup. So he's very poke, chip, evasive, and he uses that evasiveness to get you to overextend in order to capitalize on that with his counter hitting moves. So because of that, he doesn't have the best mix-up potential. His lows may be very annoying, but the good ones of them are very dangerous. Launch punishable or floatable, because his best damaging low is this slide here, and especially against a character like Armor King, it is very easy to float and make him pay for it. Because of that, he struggles to break open turtles. If you're turtling away from Lee, he has to run in and he has to start taking risks, and he has a hard time mounting a comeback because his lows are not the most damaging. He has a hard time breaking up turtles. One of the moves I should highlight, in addition to his slide, which gives him a number of follow-ups, and this quote-unquote launching grab that he has, one of the additional tools he could use to break open turtles is this mistrap. Even on block, that final kick deals 20 damage and it's inescapable. But in order to access it, he has to, because this is his 3-3, the first kick is 13 frames. If he does 3-3 quickly, he whiffs the first kick, so it doesn't come out, and only the second kick comes out. So he's sitting there like a sitting duck for a long time, and he has to do like a very specific just frame just to get 20 damage. So his comeback potential is not the best. The other notable thing, or at least for like the ranks where I play, red ranks and early rulers and whatever, Lee is a very difficult character in terms of execution. He's very demanding, and notoriously for not so much of a high reward. Well, depending on how you look at it, definitely not in Season 3, most people would say. So because of that, most Lee players spend a lot of time in practice mode grinding their 10-frame punishers in this Acid Rain or whatever, Falling Rain, grinding his combos, which are very demanding. And because of that, I feel that they don't have enough energy or like time left in order to lab matchups. That is why generally the Lees that I face online are typically very flowchartish, and they kind of like play almost the exact same. Like, you face one Lee up until a certain point. I'm not here to teach you how to fight very high level Lees or I'm your father. I'm here to teach you how to fight like generic Lees online, and they almost all play the same. So if they will fall for your cheese a lot of the time, no matter what the cheese you have with your character, they will likely fall for it, and they will try to cheese you out themselves. So it becomes like sort of a cheese fest when you're fighting a Lee. Whoever gets to apply their offense more frequently kind of like wins, and there's very kind of like little room for kind of like fundamentals and whatever in the match. In addition to the previous point, or on top of it, a lot of like the best moves that Lee has either start with or end with a duckable high. So a lot of his great tools are either highs or lows, and not enough fantastic or good mids. I'm not saying that it's like he completely lacks mids, but he kind of like has the same problem that Armor King here has, where if you're facing a general kind of like Lee or Armor King online, it's not a horrible idea to actually duck. Not a horrible idea. I'm not saying duck all the time, you're going to evade everything. I'm saying that especially from like range, or if you're fighting a, like I said, a generic online Lee, ducking is not a horrible idea because he's going to be doing his typical flowcharts and they're going to be involving a lot of highs and a lot of lows. Not enough good mids, like I said. So you can sort of use that against them. Lee is also one of those characters that has fantastic keep out, meaning that he can effectively keep his hurt box back but chug hitboxes at you from range. This is one of the most like effective ways of playing him, but he himself, when he's trying to close the gap on you, a lot of his moves, or most of his moves, lack range. Now notably, this forward 4-3 was buffed in Season 3, it's now 14 frames, but despite that, he struggles to punish moves with pushback. For example, if I use Armor King's forward 4-4 here as an example, it is minus 14 on block. If I could demonstrate this here, it's minus 14. And Lee has two like notable 14 frame punishers, first of which is 4-2-1. First hit is a mid, 14 frames, and the second hit is a high. It's very similar to Armor King's 4-2-1 in the sense that the second hit is always a high, but the first hit is 14 frames, not 15. And as you can see there, it fails to punish forward 4 from Armor King. His other 14 frame punish is his standing 3, and it will also fail to connect. What I found to connect kind of like semi-reliably only from close enough ranges is back 2-4, which is not enough damage, and if you actually block it from a range which is more realistic, you won't be able to punish it. Theoretically, you could squeeze in a forward 4-3 in there, but it's very, very difficult. I haven't been able to do it, and I suppose very few Lees actually do. Actually have the capability to do it. So this creates the kind of like trifecta of if Lee is trying to, if Lee has the life lead, or it's still very early in the round, you'd find him staying back. That's one of the strategies he could invoke, and chug out his keep out on you. Whether or not he transitions to hitman stance is not relevant in this case. But if you have the life lead, or if it's late in the match and he's about to lose, if you invoke moves like this forward 4 from Armor King, he's gonna have a hard time, like you're the one who's keeping him away. So you can kind of like invoke that sort of strategy. Lee happens to have, like I said, fantastic 10 frame punishment. It is demanding in terms of execution, but it's still nonetheless fantastic. Both when he's standing and when he's crouching, because like I said, his tsunami kicks are 10 frames of startup. Because of this, I'd say, and I made this very similar point when I talked about Mishima's, refrain from using moves that are just barely punishable at minus 10, minus 11. Typically with most characters that have powerful 12 frame punishers, they're generally using, thinking about those. Again, I'm talking about not the highest ranks. And when they block something that looks punishable, or they're not certain, they're going to chug out that 12 frame punish. But with characters like Mishima's with their flash punches, and Lee, who depends on his 10 frame punish so much, I'd say his 10 frame punish, depending on range or where he blocks a move, is kind of like superior to even his 14 frame punishers. So because of that, refrain from using strategies that evolve around, okay, I'm just going to chug out a wall standing 2 from Armor King, it's just minus 10, no big deal. I'm going to do this forward 4-2, I'm going to attempt a dark upper even if it gets blocked. The same thing that happens against Mishima's, they're going to punish that because they spend a lot of time like identifying, or they even just do flash punches regardless because they just do 1-1, and if they see them connect, they just do the 2. Lee is kind of like similar to that. So refrain from using a lot of minus 10 punishable stuff. And while I'm at it, refrain from using moves that rely on kind of like staying on the ground for safety, because he has a steel pedal in the form of his blazing kick, and he can punish that, maybe not to the fullest potential, like it's not going to yield a lot of damage, but he's still going to be doing above average damage to you if you choose to stay on the ground. Another important point to make against Lee: refrain from using highs against him. He loves slipping under those. He slips under highs for breakfast. A lot of his strategies revolve around using something that's kind of like negative. Should switch back to guard all. For example, like this. Well, maybe not at -9, but if he does something that's, for example, like -7, -6, his next move is generally going to be trying to slip under your retaliation with a down 3. This high crushes almost instantly, and on counter hit, I think he can get a back 3-3 pickup, so he gets a full combo on you. So refrain from using a lot of highs, or of course there's going to be like a trifecta to this, and instead, even when he's not using down 3, a lot of his moves have transitions into hitman stance. When he does that, he hurls his hurt box back, and a lot of highs slip over his head, or he retaliates with his power crush, which is of course notorious. So because of that, using highs against him is typically dangerous, and I would overall advise you to stick to quick mids. I'm going to highlight a reason later on as to why this is much more, there are additional reasons to doing this. So for example, if your character is blessed with a 12 frame mid like Armor King here, down forward 4, abuse those. Now his counterplay to that is going to be doing something that's like faking you out with something and then counter hitting you out of your mid with his magic 4 or something. But if your mid is 12 frames, he has to be completely neutral for his magic 4 to counter hit you, or he has to be like -1. Maybe the interaction with his down forward 4 and -1 would kind of like mess you over a little bit. But generally, overall, don't retaliate usually with jabs and highs all that much. He's going to slip under those, and he's going to be very annoying. In addition to the previous point, there's one other thing that kind of like bleeds into it. Punishing him is kind of like difficult. He's usually not very punishable. He's usually quite safe, apart from his lows. But he has where he is punishable, it's still kind of like a little bit confusing. For example, he has this string 2-1-1. And as you can see, the final hit is this rolling elbow, kind of like animation. And as you can see there on block, it is punishable at -12. The problem with that is, again, this is not going to apply to the highest level players, but that rolling elbow is very similar to this move, which is his homing move from neutral, which is just 1+2. This move is actually safe at -4. Now you could say in this instant that it's easy, I'll just look for the trail of the homing move. It leaves this kind of like sweat / salt, whatever trail it leaves behind, and this is actually part of a string. Well, in the heat of the moment, detecting the part of the string can sometimes be difficult. You can be thrown off by him doing just this. In addition to that, a lot of Lees kind of like detect this, and they specifically customize their character with like auras and whatever, all those customization options, and they include a lot of white pieces on him to make detecting this trail kind of like a little bit more tricky. Other examples include, for example, 4-3-3. See that final axe kick is -13. And if he does forward 4-3, the final axe kick is very identical, and it's only -8. He has a lot of other examples. I'd say that, for example, distinguishing between his while standing 2-3 and his while standing 2-4 can sometimes be difficult in some situations. This is his power crush. It's -15. It had the pushback, I believe, nerfed, so it's more consistent to punish. But his forward 4-3 is, for all intents and purposes, safe, because on block it is -11 with a lot of pushback, so very few characters can reach there. And depending on the side switch, you might get mixed up between these two. You kind of like, again, have to rely on the aura of the power crush, and of course visual and sound cues to distinguish between the two. I'd say even his hop kick looks fairly similar to the first hit of his slash kick, which is running 3-4. So there are a lot of situations where you're going to be like a little bit confused as to whether or not the Lee is punishable, and I talked about retaliating with highs and how dangerous that could be against Lee even when he's negative, which is why, again, this is another reason to stick to quick mids. Again, this down forward 4 from Armor King is 12 frames. He does have 13 frames in his down forward 1 and shoulder, but shoulder is pretty punishable. I'm not here to talk about that. But I would advise you to stick to down forward 4 even as a punisher if you're having difficulty distinguishing these two. Yes, definitely down forward 4 is not the best punisher in the world. It's not even a punisher at all if you consider it. It's only 15 damage. It's much better to retaliate with the back 1-2, get 27, so that's 12 damage more. But if you're getting confused by the Lee, just stick to down forward 4. Is going to serve you multi-purposes. It will punish the punishable move. It will stop him from sniffing under you with lows with his down 3 when you're trying to when he's trying to do something that's not punishable and snuff under that with down 3. So it's going to serve you a lot of purposes. He can sidestep around that. He can kind of like bait it and counter hit it, but generally that's going to be the strategy you should invoke. Generally, people agree that sidestep left is the correct sidestep against Lee. Oddly enough, while I do not like really doubt that sentiment, it was like created by people who are far more knowledgeable than me. In situations where stepping is actually a very good idea, like an option select or something against a string or something else, I actually found that sidestep right is kind of like more consistent. But we'll get to that when I talk about the specifics. Another point I'd like to make is that don't tech as much on the ground against Lee. He has a lot of tech catches, most of which are deadly. If he catches you with this blazing kick, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So generally, he has a lot of situations where he puts you in this bound state. And so holding back against Lee, especially when he's juggling you and you're kind of like on the ground or something, is a much better and safer idea in like 99% of situations. So don't tech as much against Lee. He has a lot of deadly tech traps, especially at the wall. The tracking of down 3 was kind of like nerfed in Season 3. It used to track to both sides. Now tracking to the left is removed. So that bleeds more into the sidestep left kind of like mentality. But overall, teching against Lee is dangerous if you're going to tech left. So while I am going to talk about this in the specifics video, which is the next one, I just wanted to highlight one last thing about talking about Lee like in general, which is of course his hitman stance. He has another stance in his mid-step, but it's not nowhere nearly as good. And generally, hitman stance is what you're going to encounter most of the time. He has a lot of transitions into it, a lot of moves transition into it, a lot of strings, a lot of stuff. I believe this back four also transitions into it. He has a lot of transitions. Now I'm going to dive into it in depth when I discuss the move list kind of like up close in the following video. But in short, from hitman stance, his quickest attack is a 12 frame high. This jab is 12 frames, and it's not going to play that much of a factor. His quickest mid is 15 frames. In hitman stance 1+2, it's 15 frames. And it is, as you can see, only 25 damage, and on counter hit, it gives him nothing. It just gives him 2 extra damage, and I believe even the frame advantage is the same. Now, these are not the sexy and most attractive options that online Lees go for. What online Lees go for is the launcher in the form of Hitman Stance 2, it is 19 frames. The Power Crush in Hitman Stance 3, which is 17 frames and is a high, it is of course homing also. And Hitman Stance 4, which I don't believe grants him a combo, even with the highest execution, usually just grants him a guaranteed hit. I believe in the form of Hitman Stance 4/4 or something else. So first of all, you can just simply hold back against the stance because the low is kind of like reactable. It's 24, 26 depending on the range. So you can kind of like, it's in the reactable range, and if you block it, it's of course a stagger low, so it's launch punishable. But the general rule that I kind of like tell you is that there can be sort of like a pattern as to what he's going to do, or what you can do, sorry, to option select the stance. Since his quickest mid is 15 frames, he has to be at least +5 when he enters the stance in order to not get snuffed by a dick jab. So in most situations, a dick jab is going to serve you wonders against this stance. You just need to recognize whether or not he was plus upon entering it. The thing is, while he has a lot of transitions, like for example back 4, and this gives him +8, but as you can see he's kind of like far away from you, a lot of transitions on hit are definitely going to be plus. So when he transitions into hitman stance on hit, generally be defensive. This has a couple of exceptions, most notably down 3, even on hit. As you can see, it's -3 on hit, and even if he transitions to hitman stance, it shaves a couple of frames, but he's still -1. So down 3, even on hit, I don't think you should respect the stance. You should challenge him. And the additional is what was given to him in Season 3, which is while standing 3-3, which he transitions to hitman stance at -4. So these two options, even when he transitions into hitman stance at on hit, you should not respect him. The opposite is kind of like true for on block. If he transitions into hitman stance on block, you should generally challenge. Notable exceptions are the 3+ on block moves that he has. Notably, back 4, which transitions him into the stance at at +5, like that. Up forward 3+4, which also on hit transitions him into the stance at +8. And finally his slash kick, which of course is going to be plus, and it transitions him into the stance at, I believe, also +6. So just recognize how he transitioned into the stance, and based on that you should choose whether or not to challenge. Your challenge, even though I'm going to look into it much in depth in the upcoming video, is basically going to be dick jab at 12 frame mid, maybe a power crush, and that will create the mind game between you and the Lee as to whether or not he's going to sidestep your 12 frame move, which is very linear, usually like this, down forward 4 from Armor King, and their dick jabs come into play. He can use his wall bounce move to jump over your dick jab. I'm going to talk about all that in depth. But generally, the general rule, detect how he entered the stance, and based on that, you should either respect and hold back and try to block the low, or you should always challenge with maybe a dick jab, maybe a down forward 4 or 12 frame mid, maybe even go for a power crush. So that's going to be it for this portion of the video. The next upcoming video, like I said, is going to be a traditional look at his move list, finding optimal punishers, dealing with strings, duck opportunities, sidestep opportunities, and whatnot. But for this video, I believe this is going to be it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.